What's the most up video you have ever seen? Back when r/watch PRPD still existed, I went through a period where I'd spend an hour or two every day on it. There was a few ones that stick with me, but the worst one, hands down, is a video of somebody in a burning apartment building and is trying to escape through a few story high window, but the window has a metal bar cage on it, so they are sitting in this metal cage being cooked alive and their screams are terrifying. Once they die, the heat causes stimulus to their nerves or something. I'm not a medical professional, and they flail and shake on the bars. A video of a prison riot from a few years ago. I believe it was somewhere in South America. I can't remember what country though. In the prison I think there was one large gang and a bunch of smaller rival gangs. Saying that all hell broke loose once the riot started is an understatement, because no depiction of hell has been as brutal as this video was. The larger gang slaughtered and butchered everyone. The one that stood out to me the most is this one guy they shot up with adrenaline. To keep him alive and conscious, they then proceeded to cut off all his arms and legs, skin him alive, and cut off his face, all while he's alive and awake. Before the video cuts to something different, the guy is a literal ball of mangled flesh and blood, making horrific gurgling sounds from the hole where his mouth used to be as the gang members slit his throat with a machete. Another was this really fat guy that they cut open while alive and then beheaded him and placed his head inside his cut open stomach. The rest of the video is pretty much just the cameraman walking around the prison showing off the absolute carnage. Carnage is the only word I can use to describe it. Everything was covered in blood and guts, arms and legs and heads and feet and anything you can think of just piled everywhere, torsos cut in half and pinned to walls. I work in a prison in Texas, and you wouldn't believe, or maybe you would, the things folks are willing to do not only to others, but to themselves. I watched a guy jump into the concrete floor and split his head wide open, tons of genitalia mutilation, and slicing folks up. There was this one guy that lost a bet and his wife was 3 days late on payment. During those 3 days 6 dudes. This man continually, until payment was made. During a riot back in like the 1980s, I think, the inmates basically made blowtorches and put the flame on the heads of rival gangs to the point that the brains melted and caused so much pressure that their heads literally exploded. There is so much that can go wrong. 3 of them are basically on par with each other for me. The one where ISIS used detonation cord to explode like 10 people's heads at once. The one where ISIS put a bunch of people in a cage and lowered it into a pool. The HD underwater video of them drowning. And the one where some cartel strapped a guy to a chair and cut off his fingers one by one with bolt cutters. I couldn't get to the end of it, but I heard they forced him to eat them. It was a few years ago. Kid was live streaming on Facebook Live, I believe. I think he was in a call with friends. You could hear a girl crying, I believe, saying stuff like "Don't do it, people will miss you." The kid had a bandana over the bottom part of his face, and I noticed plastic on the back wall going up almost to the ceiling, covering the window. This goes on for a few minutes with the person in the call saying the same stuff. The kid then grabs a shotgun, looked like a short-barreled one, and is looking it over. And like a snap of the fingers, he puts the barrel under his chin and pulls the trigger, and blood, brain and basiali his head splatter on the back wall. Some missing, the plastic sticking to the ceiling. What's even worse is about 30 seconds to a minute later you hear a door open and a woman's voice. The mother calling for her son. You then hear the kid's door open and then screaming. Just screaming. That was enough internet for a few days after that. I've seen the live footage from the Al Noor Mosque shooting. I guess I kinda watched it out of morbid curiosity. It really stood out to me just how quickly things went from normal to absolute chaos. Like there was this moment near the beginning where the shooter was orienting his car toward the street in the alley next to the mosque so that he could drive away quickly afterward. It looked like he might be trying to turn out into the road, and there was this guy crossing the street that stopped for a second to let him out. He just waved the guy on and the guy gave him that kind of "thanks bro" wave of courtesy. It was just so weird to see something so normal happen right before something so insane. Then there was the moment he was walking toward the mosque, armed to the teeth. I noticed he had a strobe light on one of his guns. I have never thought about something like that before, but I guess it has the effect of disorienting whoever you point it at. There was a guy that looked like he was getting into a car outside that he walked right past. The guy looked at him like, what the hell are you doing? But neither of them said anything. It also looked like there may have been some people in cars outside that saw him and decided to stay in the car before the shooting began. Once the shooting started, it was fucking chaos. It happened so fast. Over 40 people died, and from the time the first shots were fired until most of the people who died were shot was maybe 60 seconds. It was horrible, but there were moments of real heroism too. One guy charged the shooter from behind. That guy ended up getting killed, but he managed to knock the shooter down, and the distraction gave time for somebody to break a window, and probably dozens of people got out as a result. There was one guy who had hidden somewhere in the mosque, and then as the shooter was reloading, he made a run for it. He didn't make, but I have to admire the courage to try to run instead of just freezing up like most people probably would. After he realized a lot of people were getting out due to the window, he went outside and tried to shoot them as they were running away. I don't think he hit anybody during this part, but I'm not sure. Then he came back in. There were wounded people inside that he finished off. I can't imagine the fear those people felt. They thought they had gotten through and could just wait on medical personnel to reach them, but it was a lie. They probably had it the worst. For most people, it was over before there was really time to think about it, but for them, they had a few minutes to process it, and even maybe some relief, only to have it end that way. Then there was the lady that got killed in front of the mosque. She had gotten out, but came back to look for her husband. It cost her life, but I can't imagine the bravery it took to go back. It's a terrible video. I do not recommend anyone to watch it, ever, and it is illegal to possess it in several countries, but it may be the purest expression of the chaos of life that I've ever witnessed. Things went from normal to chaos so quickly, and I think the main reason I watched it was to try to figure out what I would have done in that situation. Is there something I could have done that would have increased my odds of survival? I came to the conclusion that it was mostly luck and random chance that determined who died and who lived. Honestly, that's the most terrifying part. 3 stick out to me. One was a traffic stop gone bad where this crazy guy killed the cop for no reason. The screams from the cop are one of the most haunting things ever. Second, we are animals getting skinned alive. Watched maybe 15 seconds of that, and that was 15 seconds too long. Third was a video of a guy who fucked up jumping off a cliff or something, landed face first onto a small area of concrete before landing in the water. The next shot was a close-up of his face, which was literally split in half vertically, not sure if he was alive or dead. I've seen a video where a man got hit by a train in India. The man was cut in half across his waist, and he was still alive. His legs and pelvis were lying not far away from him on the tracks, and the whole village had come out to look at him. He tried to crawl through the mud with half of his body missing. You could see his intestines and everything. That was probably the worst video I have ever seen. Still, images of gore and that don't bother me so much, but this guy was just horrible to see. I saw one best gore. Now there's a lot of really fucked up on there. I spent an hour on there and decided it would be best to never return. The most disturbing one I've seen, one with a woman who just was in a car accident and her eye was gouged out from the impact and the skin on her face was ripped off. She was alive and whimpering. It was scarring. The saddest one I've seen is with this little girl, probably 2, in China, whose foot was broken and hanging on by a bone or 2 in her ankle. Nobody helped her. They just let her sit there and cry while she tried to stand up. The last one was the most fucked up. It was again in China. A little kid ran out the back window of the apparent building he was in and got trapped in some razor wire. His head was gone, and his entrails were hanging out of the body. The child's parents left him there alone. BTW. China is not good with child care as it turns out.